what you gonna do, what you gonna do? Ooh, too bad that we can't be tamed. To be fair, could you really blame us? So obvious why we're famous. So what you gonna do, what you gonna do? Ooh, gonna rise up, gonna get one. Take this day by storm. Gonna wake up in a new light. Next day do some more. Damn, wake up in the morning and we're good to go. Gonna get some, hustle till done. The next day doing our core. You know we gonna get where we're going. All we gotta do is keep rolling. Doing our core. You know we gonna get where we're going. All we gotta do is keep rolling. Next day doing our core.
Face to face in this trashy bar. Another glass and I am going places. Makes me laugh about the irony of everything. I like the way you're thinking. I don't really care about the music on the dance floor. I don't really mind all the smokers in the bathroom. I don't care at all, baby, you got my attention. So you were saying, oh no, I don't see the logic of things. It's quite a lonely world that we're living in. Oh baby, when you're next to me. Times another drink and I'll go anywhere. The way you smell, like a flash in the universe. You are illuminating. I don't really care about the people in the bar line. I don't really mind all the who goes doing stage dives. I don't care at all, baby. You got my attention, so you were saying I don't see the logic of things. It's quite a lonely world that we're living in. Oh baby, you are something special, I'm sure. Everything makes total sense when you're next to me. Even if I told you I could never let you go, I'm not so sure you believe me. But if I mean to show you, I will never let you go. No, 'cause you don't see the logic of things. It's quite a lonely world that we're living in. Oh baby, you are something special, I'm sure. Everything makes total sense when you're next to me.
Yo, what is up, everybody? Hello,
Hey,
Matthew.
everybody. And good morning, Adam, as well. Thank you so much for having me with you today.
Love having you, buddy. Love having you, and thank you for filling in Patrick's absence. So
Well,
it's always
since
appreciated.
Since your work wife is out of town, having your work side chick step up to join you, it only made sense.
Indeed. How is everyone's Saturday going? It's great to see everyone. If you are new to Guy in a Cube, please put hashtag new in the chat. We love seeing all the new faces. Also, if you are not familiar, Matthew Roche is a PM on the Power BI CAT team, or customer advisory team, as part of the Power BI product team. And he has a little blog over at ssbipolar.com. So go check that out. And I apologize, I forgot to do a little thing. Hey, Alex, can you put a link in there to Matthew's blog? So definitely go check that out. Always lots of great stuff over there, Matthew. I enjoy reading those blogs. They always are thought-provoking. Well,
thank you very much, Adam, and thank you, Alex, for all of the links today.
Yes, our link master. So we've got Christian is new, Francesco's new. Let's see who is. Chewy is vintage. I was gonna say Christian said new, but I'm like, you've been around a while. Jason's new. Nuker. Yeah, awesome. Great to see everyone. And then Gavin asked a very important question, Matthew. If you are moderating,
I am not also moderating today because I can't type and talk at the same time. And I also have very old eyes. So going between the various things that I need to look at is just not going to happen today. So Crystal, Chatmaster C, hopefully will be extra eager on that banhammer to catch up or make up for my slack today.
Crystal and I have been having, or Chatmaster C, if you will, have been having conversations about, she's like, look, I really like how Matthew responds to people. And she's like, is it okay? And I'm like, yeah. So we've been working on, like, because she's more of like, she wants to go extreme. And I'm like, whoa, not that much. So we're working on it. She's getting there. Susan, thank you for becoming a supporter. Very much appreciated, which is a great segue into our appreciation for all of the members of Guy in a Cube. You help us do what we do here on the Guy in a Cube channel. It's very much appreciated. If you see folks with a green name and or the Guy in a Cube logo next to their name, those are members of Guy in a Cube. Is very much appreciated. If you want to check it out, you can hit the join button down below and it'll tell you more. There's no commitment, just a big thank you from us over here. With that, the second half of the show will be a members only chat. Everyone can still watch, but only members can and moderators can participate in the chat. So be aware of that. Members, please hold off on your questions. We will, Chatmaster C will give you the queue to get the questions in. She'll clear the queue for everything else. So the first half will focus on non-members, and then the second half will focus on member questions. Also, one of the benefits of being a member is pre-submitting your question, and we do have a pre-submitted question today. So if you're a visitor or higher tier, you can pre-submit those, and usually we can spend a little more time on those. So we do have one today. All right, questions. So for the questions, be sure to put Q: in front of your question, and they will get queued up. Please only do this once. You do not need to spam your question. Otherwise, we have a 3 strikes rule. You will get put in a timeout. And chances are, if you're really spamming, we may not ask or even answer your question on the stream. So be aware of that. So one time's all you need to get into the queue. Chatmaster C is queuing all of those items. I very much appreciate her doing all of that. All right, Matthew, are you ready?
If the pre-submitted question is for me, I haven't seen it yet. Not. So yes, I am.
It's not. It's yeah, no, it's all good. And then that'll be at the second half, so it's not going to be first. All right. And I see Matthew, actually, you're already on. You deleted a message. I like that. Okay, let's see here. Wyatt, thank you so much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. Super chats always take priority, by the way, so be aware of that. All right, let's get into the questions. Let's go with, so Renato had a bunch of questions early on. We're picking one and going to go with that. All right. Why incremental refresh implementation is different in data flows and data sets? Are there any plans to the data flows one to be more flexible like the data set implementation? Matthew, what are your thoughts?
So Renato went on and added a few additional comments in chat elaborating about date time, or the requirement to have a date time column and similar things. And it's worth emphasizing that incremental refresh is a happy path scenario. So basically, this is an easy UI-driven way to do incremental loads, which typically would require like change data capture or some custom logic to only find the things that have changed most recently for data sources that are too large to do a full refresh on an ongoing basis. And both incremental refresh in data sets and data flows do require a date time column, because the most common scenario for these incremental loads is to have a specific range where you're loading the things that changed in the last day or the last week or the last whatever it was. So in this regard, they're very similar. For data sets, the most common way to have non-standard incremental load patterns is using the XMLA endpoint, where you're just reloading a given partition. And this really gets down to why the implementation is different between data sets and data flows, because a data set is an analysis services tabular model. That's its internal implementation, and it has the characteristics of a tabular model, whereas a data flow is a CDM folder. So it's files and JSON metadata as its internal implementation. So if you want to have more flexible incremental refresh for a data flow, the pattern to follow is to have an external data flow where you're using Azure Data Factory or another non-Power Query based ETL tool to load data into a CDM folder that you can then attach to your workspace. And you're probably saying, well, this is a lot more work. This is going outside of Power BI. You're absolutely correct. Just as it would be to implement custom incremental load logic for a data set. It's just the details are different because on the inside, the details are different.
Yes. That was an excellent answer.
Well, thank you. Well, it's the best thing about being able to think about it in advance.
I do like the term happy path. That makes me happy. Yeah. So there was something else I was going to add there. So on the incremental refresh also, I've been in conversations with folks where they're like, look, they want to avoid doing like the custom partitioning approach, even on data sets, and like just want to use incremental refresh. And I'm like, at some point when you need that non-data, as Matthew was talking about, or if you're at like scale of data and look, the incremental refresh just isn't partitioning it the way that's the most optimized, you're entering into that pro dev space where you've got to go that direction. So you're past the nice dialogue or what I call the wizard that helps you from a business analyst perspective. You are entering into pro dev space, and so you've got to use pro dev tools to do it.
So you're moving past the wizard and getting closer and closer to the dragon.
Yes. So Gandalf the Grey would have used the dialogue, but Gandalf the White is pro dev.
Fair enough. I'll agree with that.
Also, Tristan, good to see you there. He had a great comment. So he said dataset incremental refresh is available in Pro, but dataflow's incremental refresh requires premium or premium per user. So keep that in mind.
Very true.
Yes. Always like to keep people, on their toes of what's available where. All righty.
So what's next?
All right. So first off, I did see in the chat, Catherine, great to see you in the chat. And it was mentioned that her birthday was yesterday. So happy birthday, Catherine.
Oh, happy birthday, Catherine.
Yes. Had it been today, Matthew would have had a cake ready.
If I had known in advance, I would have made a cake.
Yes. All right. CG, is there a way to calculate the number of segments for one or more objects in a data set, or a fixed quality, like how much space is available in a segment? Ooh. So he had a follow-up here. Explanation. I'd like to be able to estimate how long a processing will run when connecting to the profiler against Power BI service, like processing segment 170 for fact table. So you're not going to get, from a processing perspective, you're not going to get that type of information. What you can see, Phil Seamark. So Alex, can you drop Phil Seamark's visualizing a refresh blog post That blog does give you some breakdowns using some of the profiler trace information, so you can see it by partition and how much time was query versus processing. The other thing is using things like Vertipack Analyzer won't necessarily give you the segment breakdown, but the DMVs that are available through like the XMLA endpoint or like when you're connected to your Power BI dataset you can see like per segment information. And so that's something that you can go check out. But you're not going to get, from a processing perspective, you're not going to get like status of segment and whatnot. I don't believe that the profiler stuff gets you that.
Yeah, I don't think that you get that type of real-time data.
Yeah. So the thing I've had real success with enterprise customers doing scale of those items is that Phil Seamark blog is a great way to really narrow down like, okay, what's happening at what time and how long things are taking. So definitely check that out.
And especially if you are capturing it over time as well, this will allow you to see patterns and trends, not just seeing a single refresh or a small number of refreshes, and where a spike or a hotspot or something that takes longer than usual or shorter than usual might skew your understanding of the standard patterns.
Yes. So hopefully that helps. Also, apparently, Alex D's birthday is tomorrow, so
I'm skeptical about that. I need to see proof, because when people start saying my birthday is tomorrow after baked goods have already entered the conversation, definitely trust but verify on that.
Yes. Well, happy birthday, Alex, regardless, even if it's your unbirthday. All right, Jason. If primary key, foreign key are not consistently the same data type in an Azure data warehouse, should you change them to text in Power Query? Oh.
No.
Well, before that, we gotta unpack this a little bit.
It doesn't depend. No.
Why are your keys different data types? Like, that's my first question. So.
Yeah. So unpacking the question in my mind, to walk back from the no, which will remain the answer.
Yes.
It's that this is an example of where you want to make your data transformations as far upstream as possible. So in an ideal world, if the primary key and foreign key columns in your data source, I'm assuming they're not literally primary and foreign keys, because you can't build a relationship if the data type isn't a match on both sides.
Yes.
But if they are logical key columns rather than physical key columns, you'll have the ability to go back to the owner of that data source and have them make that change. If you can't do it, then in your Power Query, which is kind of what you're talking about here, Jason, in your Power Query or in a view in the database, somewhere before you get to your model, you will have a consistent typing, not necessarily making them text, but making them the actual data type that is represented in the values in that column, so that you're transforming them so that their data type metadata and implementation matches the data that's actually stored in those columns. And then beyond that, the idea of casting something to a type to avoid the automatic casting or automatic summarization in the data model, this is actually sort of going with the least common denominator to solve a problem that has a cleaner and more elegant solution. So casting them to the data type that they should be will solve most of the data modeling problems. And then if you want to avoid the summarization, you can go into the what is the data view? It's like the middle one in Power BI Desktop.
It's the data
between
view. The data view. Tab. The data tab or whatever.
Go into the data tab,
yes.
Select your column, and you'll have the ability to specify whether or not it gets summarized or what aggregations get applied. That's the appropriate place to solve that aspect of the problem. But understand as well, if the data source that you're working with has improperly or inconsistently applied data types, this is a problem that will keep on tripping you up every time you or someone else works with that data. So try to push back on whoever manages the database itself, because that's the right place to make those changes. And as Belinda is calling out, make the changes as far upstream as possible and as far downstream as necessary. But in this place, sure sounds like the database is the right place to make the change.
Love it. Love it. And so with the question also, I just want to harness Patrick on this stream, even though he's not here.
What the French toast?
Exactly. Don't do that.
Thank you, Patrick, for waiting until I had a mouthful of coffee for that one.
This is bananas.
All right. And then Alex's comment also, this is what keeps me up late at night, just worrying about breaking folding, depending on what you're doing in Power Query. And keep it clean, keep it simple. It avoids complications. Yes. Okay. Wow. That was Jason, I hope you got value out of that. All right. And then Sarah, thank you for becoming a member. Very much appreciated. Simon, is there a way to use Power Query parameters with dataflows? I would like the end users to be able to change parameter values in the Power BI service without having to edit the dataflow itself. Ooh, there's a bunch of things with that.
Do you want to unpack that one first, or should I just say no and we can move on?
You can say no, and then I'll follow up with a secondary item with that.
Yeah, so the Power Query Online and dataflows in Power BI do support parameters, but they're not exposed to end users. So the short answer is no, the thing that you're trying to do is not possible today. And I'll let Adam elaborate on the rest, because honestly, I don't get how parameters are used elsewhere in the Power BI service.
Same way.
I won't say that out loud. I'll let Adam talk smartly to make me sound less. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, you already hinted on it. So it's not an end user thing. Parameters are more meant for processing time, not for end user selection. And so end users will never be able to edit the parameter. Now, there is a capability for Power Query in desktop. So this is the dynamic, and maybe it's available in. I don't think it's available in dataflows. The whole dynamic M parameter item that you can use for direct query. Oh yeah, so that's not available for dataflows. I love how I connect the dots in my head as I say it. So that is something that is available that can be affected by end user report usage, but that's specific for direct query, and it's also limited to certain data sources. So that may get you what you want, although with direct query, I always put caution around that. And then the other thing with that, though, is from an import perspective, like end users doing things, and even on the data, that data is cached. That data only gets updated when you go to refresh or process. And so that's when the parameters come into play. So, all right. Good question. All right, Christopher. Will there be any business planning features in the future? In our business, there's a discussion between SAP, SAC, and or Power BI as a front-end tool. What is SAC? I know what SAP is.
So it's their SAP Analytics Cloud. It's
okay.
Their more modern data visualization tool.
Nice. Okay. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say that, what is it? Early next month, it's May the 4th. The Microsoft it is Star Wars Day as well.
May the 4th.
Which reminds me of the first time that you and I ever collaborated.
Yes.
But May 4th is the beginning of the Microsoft Business Application Summit conference for 2021. Even though obviously I cannot speak about anything before it has been announced, I would say that if there are going to be any business planning features, this is a pretty big, significant, or would be a significant addition to Power BI. If we were going to be announcing something along those lines, it would likely be announced at a major event like the Business Application Summit. So I would suggest tuning in or watching the blog posts and other news around MBAS, the Business Application Summit, once we get there. But for all of the roadmap related questions until it's on the public roadmap, which Alex will probably send a link to his amazing release wave report. Until it's on that public roadmap, we can't say that it's coming until there's a public announcement about it.
Yes. So the other thing, it's like maybe this was something I just didn't understand. So we said, will there be any business planning features? What do you mean by business planning features? Like, what does that mean? Like, what specifically are you even looking for there? I don't know. Like that for me, that's where I'm kind of blocked on that question a little bit.
Yeah. And I'm working under the assumption that when Christopher says business planning, he is talking about the budgeting, the KPI or OKR type based scorecards and dashboards and so on. Business sense. Planning is this broad bucket of both problem domain and solution domain that it's a thing.
Got it. I now understand. All right. Yeah. How are we doing on the clock? We're good. Chat is very lively, by the way. I appreciate that. So, all right, Fahad. How to mention a combination of table fields and different DAX measures together in a single table under column headings. So you want to like combine two measures in one column?
So the way that I'm reading the question is that he wants to use the table visual, and he wants to have in that table the columns in the table visual to be data from the fields of multiple tables in the data model.
Ooh.
And multiple measures as well.
Ooh, yeah. That you would have to get creative on that. So I would think we would have another measure that is doing some of that combination. And like maybe an if of some kind, and praying that the data types are similar and whatnot. So I don't natively, like, you're not gonna be able to just drag multiple values into a single column. So you'd have to handle that from a measure perspective.
But I don't think he's saying single column. He's saying single table under the column heading. So Adam needs to keep me honest as I say this, because this is definitely not my strong point, not the expert here. But as long as your data model has the right relationships, this will enable you to drag columns from multiple tables in your data model into a given visual and have them displayed together and appropriately. So this is the multiple table fields part of it. And then the other part is that for those DAX measures, as long as those DAX measures and the logic that they implement is compatible with the tables that you're bringing in from the columns from the data model, it should work, but you need to figure out the specifics. And
so let me,
am I just, go ahead.
I don't know. So I'm going to jump over to my machine real quick, and we can maybe wallow on this for a minute. Okay. So I've got a matrix visual. And so, no, actually, that's a table. No, it is a matrix. All right. So you have the columns item here, right? So that's what we're talking about. And so from there, I can add, let's see. And you can't even add like measures there. So it's got to be a category of some kind. And so let me add in product, and we'll do color.
So do I get to tell you to zoom?
Sure. Right. And so this represents the column field, and then I've got multiple measures added under the values. Is that where you were going, Matthew?
I think that it is.
Okay. Right. So I can have those different column headings and then the different measures underneath. And so you just, can drag and drop, clicky, draggy, droppy, right? So I've got multiple measures under values, and then I can add my categories under columns, and then the matrix visual will do that. The table visual will not. So,
excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning, anytime I'm doing data visualization, something has gone terribly, terribly wrong. So this is an area where I talk the talk. Talk the talk, don't walk the walk.
Oh, it's all good. We're all expert visualization designers. So In quotes. All right. Blade Runner is back. I like that. Any recommendations for self-service BI with Power BI when row-level security must be implemented?
Implement row-level security in Power BI for your self-service scenarios.
Yes. So to Matthew's point, the row-level security is implemented on the data set. The self-service would hopefully potentially be, we've got the published data set out there and the business user is, creating the report off of that data set. So implement that in the data set and then let the user create the reports off of it, and row-level security will work and it'll be enforced.
Yeah, so. And this is an awesome pattern of managed self-service BI where there is typically a team of more privileged users that have access to all of the data. They're building the data model, including the row-level security rules inside the data model, and then they're providing access to it for the self-service visualization and other downstream work. So common pattern, best practice.
Yes. Excellent. All right, Jack. Is there a way to implement or create an Erlang C calculation in Power BI? Do you know what Erlang C calculation is? I do not.
Hey, Alex, what's Erlang C?
Maybe.
So I'm going to say yes, there is.
I'm going to say yes. I'm going to say yes. Probably through some DAX calculation, I would imagine, in a measure. You could probably do it. I have no idea what that is.
All right, so I'm actually going over to my favorite search engine. Apparently, this is a 2-parameter family of continuous probability distributions. So now that I know that it's a data science-y thing,
yes,
I will say that the places where I would look if I were in your shoes, Jack, is I would look at the integration of both R and Python into Power Query for data preparation. So you can use R and Python, which are my go-to place if I have to do something that is data science-y. The other aspect, the other capability that I would look at is the integration between Power BI and Azure Machine Learning. So if you've already implemented some of this logic in an Azure Machine Learning model, you can actually call that model directly from your dataflow ETL to include it and its output as part of your Power BI solution.
Yes. Excellent. And Santosh said that Erlang C is a forecasting methodology, so that is a great fit for
data science-y thingies.
Data science-y thingies, yes. Yes. So everything Matthew said. Excellent. All right. I think we can squeeze in one more before we cut over. Soheil said, Mbaz, this was all keynotes, so do we going to have sessions for demos of Power Platform upcoming features? Yes.
Have you looked at the schedule for MBAS, Adam?
I saw the list of the main sessions, so I have not looked and seen like all of the sessions that are there for Power BI. So the other thing I would say there are keynote sessions that are absolutely there. Some of the so like Arun's got his keynote session, that I'd say that's the big keynote session. And then there will be other sessions from other folks on the product team that will go and highlight different aspects of upcoming features and things that are coming to Power BI. There will be demos as part of that. And then past that, there are other contributors that are doing sessions at Power BI, so MVPs and the like, where they will have demos on specific topics as well. So there will be a lot of sessions for Power BI at MBAS, so definitely check that out.
Right. I am heads down enough on other things that I literally have not looked at the schedule, so I'll figure it out on the week. Alex
D said MBAS sessions aren't public yet, so that may be also why some of that question is there.
Mm.
And me saying that Arun will have a session is not, I mean, that's a given, right?
That's not under NDA.
No, I mean, like, Arun's going to have a session there. Yeah, so awesome. Chatmaster C has cleared the queue. So members, now is your chance to get your questions in. As mentioned before, members can participate in the chat. I am kicking over to member-only chat. Everyone can still watch and enjoy the learnings and whatnot, but only members and moderators will be able to participate in the chat.
And while you're switching things over, can I go back to one of the questions that Renato asked before the session began and we didn't get a chance to respond to?
Of course.
So one of the first questions that came in was around object level security in dataflows in Power BI that was on our public release plan and isn't there anymore. If you've been watching Power BI for a while, you see this from time to time. Typically, you're never happy when something that you want is put out there and then removed. But this is basically a side effect of our goal on the Power BI team to have as much information publicly available so that you know what we're working on, you know what we're planning. But sometimes when we originally publish the release plan for an upcoming wave, things change before we're able to deliver on things. And as our understanding changes, we update those release plans. So for this particular thing, think about it as being something that we know that we want to do, but we believed that we would have it done in a certain time frame. We now know that it won't be done in that time frame, and until we have confidence enough to put it back on, it probably won't show up on the release wave again until we have that confidence. Because our goal with the release wave or the release plan and the information that we share about our roadmap is to make it so that you understand and that you can plan. But sometimes we run into edge cases like this where our understanding changes. So Sorry about that.
No, yeah, it's great call out. And Jessica, commented, imagine that things change.
Yeah.
I like to say the only thing that is consistent is change. That was usually directed to like the reorgs and stuff that happen in Microsoft. It's always changing. Alrighty, let's see here. We did have, as I mentioned, members, one of the benefit of visitors and hire can pre-submit questions. We do have a question that was pre-submitted. The other thing I will say for those that are not members that are watching, Super Chats do take priority. So if there was a burning question you had and you want to get it answered, Super Chats always take priority. So, all right, let's go over. Miss Belinda sent in a question, and I did have to clarify this a little bit. So it's, will you get better, worse, or no change to the performance on a date table if you sort the table by dates in the QE? I went back and asked, I was thinking like, are we doing sort by on like a quarter end date, maybe? Or something of that nature. She clarified that no, she means the query editor in Power Query. So if we sort the dates in the query editor.
Not the Queen Elizabeth cruise ship. That was what I read when I heard QE.
That is also not what she meant. Yes.
Good to know.
Yes. So one thing I do want to call out here, let me jump over to my machine. And so what I did is I pulled in a calendar table, and I will zoom in, I promise. If I go to not enter data, what am I doing? If I go to transform data to go into Power Query, and of course it opens up on my other monitor. I have too many monitors, Matthew. Okay.
So say we all.
So I've got a calendar here where I've actually sorted it by date. So you can see here that we're sorted, and I sorted descending so that I got something different than what the default was. One thing that was interesting here is when I actually pulled it into Power BI, we will see here, let me go to the data tab. That's the data tab, Matthew. And you'll see that when I look at the actual data, it's not sorted the same way that it's sorted in Power Query. And so one thing to understand is when data is processed, the Vertipack engine will actually do sorting mechanics on its end as well. So that can play into it. And Alex, shh. I'm holding that. And then so in this case, there's a question about, so I'm going to say it depends, right? So when we're talking about performance, are we talking about visuals in Power BI? And so one thing you can do to verify that, if you're curious about, look, is a visual going to be, performance going to be impacted by the way data sorted in Power Query? we can go to something like DAX Studio and we can go validate that. And so if we go in here, I'm just going to go to, let's do all queries here real quick. Trace is started. I'm going to clear the cache, even though I don't need to because I didn't go to the visual. And we will go to, I'm going to go to the tab, and it rendered the visual. And I forgot to, so normally you would start Performance Analyzer, start recording, and then let's go. I forgot to do that. So let's clear the cache again. We'll go into the visual, refresh the visual. From here, I can go get the query that was issued by the visual. And then what we can do, I'm going to stop all queries, go to server timings, right? And then we've got, I'm going to go to server timings, let's bump that up. And then I'm going to clear cache and then run. And then we get our timings for this. At this point, you can compare it with another one. So if we've got an A/B type test, right? So I've got one where I didn't sort it and another one that did sort it. That's how you can compare it. And that's actually what I did. And so in the case from a DAX and visual perspective, there was no difference. Now, the bigger question is going to be, were you more concerned about the performance on the refresh side? And that's where you could potentially hit performance as a result of sorting in Power Query. So it depends on how things are being folded. It depends on the data source. So if query folding was broke and then you're doing sorting and it's happening on the Power BI side, that could impact performance. If query folding is taking place and that's going back to the source, it depends on the data source in terms of how that's going to perform with that given operation. So from a Power Query perspective, think about refresh processing and what's happening with the data source. From a Power BI visual and a DAX side of it, that specific operation should not impact performance.
And just to ask the dumb question here, and this is a dumb question for Adam, the sort order that's applied when you build your query to load the data into Vertipack, this is not going to directly affect any default behavior in the visuals themselves, is it?
That is correct.
Or
it will not impact
okay,
that.
Thank you.
And you can override that from a DAX perspective or from a model perspective as well. So you could do sort by a given
in the data pane.
In the data pane or in multiple panes. You're not restricted to just the data pane. But yeah, from a data model perspective, I could further on the calendar say, hey, month name is sorted by month number and so forth. And that's where I thought the question was going. But when she clarified that it was the query editor, that's where I was like, oh, well, that's different. So yeah.
Yeah. And Alex put into chat basically saying, avoid sorting in your query, unless there's some really compelling reason to do so. And odds are having the data in the query editor displayed in a certain way is not a compelling enough reason for you to leave that step in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a great question too of like, why are we even doing that? Like, what's the need for doing that? And the other thing is, if you're going against a relational database, point Power Query to a view and do it in a view. Do it there. And honestly, even so, I won't go down there. I want to rat hole on this just because from a relational side, a table does not enforce any sort of sort order. Yes.
It's the query that does blah blah blah. But this is probably not the time or place for that.
No, yeah. So again, why do we need to do that? So, that
explains
that makes
it.
sense. That makes sense. All right. Excellent.
Yes, definitely do it in Power Query.
Totally do it in Power Query. Thomas, thank you. Exposing my T-SQL knowledge, sorting and views are not supported. All right, so don't do it in a view. All right, excellent. Now on to the member questions. So Randy had put this in the chat earlier. He said he had to run to go enjoy sunshine. I cannot blame him for that. I know, Matthew, you've been trying to enjoy sunshine on your porch. And has the weather allowed
minimal
that?
Success.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, Redmond. All right. So Randy's question, he said he would look at this later. Randy, for organizations that have established data warehouses, for what reasons do you recommend that they investigate the use of data flows? That's a great question.
Okay. So we should have done this one first.
You are speaking to Matthew here.
Yeah. So the main thing that I want to ground this response in is that data warehouses exist to have data that has been prepared to solve a broad set of problems in a central location that can be managed and accessed once. So a data warehouse is often an upstream single source of truth that you can build multiple, tabular models, data sets, or other data solutions on top of it. And typically, if you have a data warehouse, data flows are going to be a smaller part of your data estate, because data flows are a self-service tool for solving the same category of problems that data warehouses solve. And the time when you choose a data flow as the right solution, it's typically when you need a tool that is appropriate and accessible for self-service users, these citizen data developers or citizen data engineers. And in a lot of situations, having an existing centralized IT-managed data warehouse means that the problems that you would otherwise look to a data flow to solve, they have already been solved. So don't solve them again. And if you have the IT resources and the priority so that the team that maintains that data warehouse, that they can keep up with the oncoming stream of requests from business to add things, to change things, to evolve the data warehouse as a platform, if they can keep up with the business requests, I would say don't consider data flows, because having it in the data warehouse is going to be a more elegant, centralized solution. But that data warehouse team very often cannot keep up with all of the changes from all of the different business groups or individual users that need like one more column added to a dimension, something along those lines. And to get to the core of the question here, those are the reasons why you look at data flows. So a data flow is there so that you can have a single prepared source of pre-aggregated, enriched, standardized, cleansed data that isn't available elsewhere upstream. So it's going to be for those cases that the data warehouse either doesn't and won't contain because it's out of scope for the goals of the data warehouse, or where the agility that the business users require can't be met by the team based on their resourcing and other priorities.
Love it. And there was a lot of, the chat was very passionate about this as well. So Kevin mentioned that they also use data flows to quickly bring in new data to explore it before putting it in the data warehouse. So like an exploration type effect. That's
I like
interesting. I do like that. That's actually the first time I've heard someone mention that specifically as a use for data flows, but it makes sense.
I want to call something out here. So Chris Wagner said this is also a good breeding ground for the citizen data engineer, and I want to give credit where credit is due. It was Chris and his team where I learned that term, citizen data engineer. I'd never heard it anywhere else before. I have been using this in my presentations and other communications since then, and having a group of business users, people who are not in, the IT/data world, they're not on that team, but they are doing the work of data engineers, bringing their domain expertise and tools like data flows to bear to solve problems that otherwise would get solved in less ideal ways. That's really key. So kudos to Chris and his team for blazing that trail, as it were.
Yes. And then Mr. Paul Turley says, watch Matthew's video series about creating a data culture on BI Polar YouTube channel. Definitely
hey, Alex.
That. Hey, Alex, can you, drop that link in the chat? And then Rishi added, for me, the biggest benefit of data flows in this scenario is governance and access plus performance. You don't need to give DB credentials to every user who wants to connect Power BI to it. Yeah.
Wow. So I actually, I like the way that Rishi is thinking, but very often so never mind. I'm not gonna pick it apart. I tend to latch on to little details. I will let go today because I know that there are more questions in the queue.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough. Either way, very passionate. Lots of comments. So that's great. All right, Daniel. Is it better to build one data flow for a fact table and the fact table's necessary dimensions, or separate data flows for each table?
Ooh. So
It depends.
the biggest factor of this, so yes, it will depend. The biggest factor that I would consider is the fact that the data flow is the refresh domain. So you refresh a data flow at a time. And I would lean towards saying have your facts and dimensions defined in a single data flow. But this only makes sense if they will, if you can refresh them all together and it makes sense for them to be refreshed together. If we step back from the specific question and look at multiple data flows as part of the answer, very often you will have the same types of patterns that you would have as part of a data warehousing solution, where there are staging data flows where the data is extracted but not transformed. Then there are data flows to perform tasks like standardization and cleansing and enrichment. And then the final data flow in that chain, the most downstream data flow, will be the one the one or more that will then create the fact and dimension entities. And then your data set will pull directly from that.
Excellent. Love it. All right. Power 6. Or Power VI instead of BI. I guess it's not 6. I thought it was Roman numerals. Follow up to Jason's question. What is the performance benefit for primary key not being text? Coming from a primarily GP data world where most are text in a DB. And by text, I'm going to assume you mean like a GUID or GUID, however you want to pronounce it. So from the Vertipack engine perspective, it's integers are always quote unquote the best. Although from a string column for a key, my understanding, and I know Marco's in the chat, he may correct me, is that under the hoods, the string is still going to be an integer, and then there's going to be a dictionary along with it. And so from a relationship perspective, there may or may not be a performance impact by that. There may be though. Like there are possibilities where I think there can be. But the other thing is you're also adding that dictionary on top of it, which is just overhead from a model size. And so the integer is going to be the best route to go if you can. So that's my take on that. Always use an integer if you can.
Yeah, and the key there is just looking at the internal implementation for how the integer or other value will be used. Mm-hmm. It's simpler, it's faster from a compute perspective to compare two integers just based on the way that they're stored. And the details to elaborate on easier versus harder will depend on the engine that's doing the work, whether it's Vertipack or SQL or other.
Yes.
And for dynamics as well. The last time that I looked at Dynamics GP back in the 90s, they had a very generic data model where they were trying to optimize for flexibility rather than performance and scale. Can't speak to that today, but that was what I remember.
Yep. Yeah, and Marco's confirming my comment on the dictionary side of it. So I do want to say I heard Bogdan make a comment that, or Akshay or someone on the engineering side say that there is a possibility for a relationship if it's a string that there could be some performance implications, but it was like some edge case. I don't have the details on that, so that might be wrong. But the big thing is the dictionary and the space used for that. And I can tell you, I'm working on an issue right now with a customer where they had like a composite key in the fact table that was a combination of 3 fields, and it's a string. And we're talking billions of rows, and we're talking gigs of data. And that one column is chewing up the one column in the fact table. If we're talking about a 60 to 70 gig model, that one column is chewing up 70% of the data model size. And the dictionary of that column was bigger than the actual data size. So it's the dictionary that was actually killing us because it was a string. So I'm like, oh my gosh, let's get rid of that. And yeah.
Are you still working on that, or did you get rid of it?
No, so they're doing some tests and things to see because the other thing is it's an aggregation thing. So they're like, well, we need that for certain like distinct count type capabilities, and so we're doing different things there. So that part's ongoing. But we did prove, I'm like, look, that's causing the problem. So we need to address that. So yes, please don't use strings for keys. All right, moving on. Dan, I love the report lineage view in the service. Is there a good way to look downstream for data flows? For example, which report are using a data flow that I created, especially by other report authors?
So that it's available through the API today. It's coming at some point in the future, and I've heard other people talk publicly about this. I don't know if it's on the release plan or not, but this impact analysis that's currently available for other assets in the workspace is coming to dataflows. I can't say exactly when, but it's on the team's roadmap. It's basically just a matter of getting it done and prioritizing it against other things.
Yeah, the other thing with the lineage view that I've seen as well is so if you're a workspace admin, and you're doing things and you want to see who's using what or even what's upstream or other items, if you're not also like part of that other workspace today, it's like you have no insights into that whatsoever. And so it's challenging.
But through the impact analysis capabilities that are available in the workspace, if I click on a data set, for example, I can see all of the reports in every, reports or other things in every workspace that I have permissions to access.
Yes.
And I can see aggregate numbers for the reports in other workspaces.
Yes.
And if I need to make a potentially breaking change, I can click on the notify downstream users.
Yes.
And it will email people or notify people, even if I can't see who they are because I lack the permissions.
There was one thing I need to validate, and this may have been updated since I first saw it, was the impact analysis. If I wasn't like a member of the other workspace, it did show that there was an item, but I couldn't actually see what it was.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct.
Okay. All right. So you're aware that there is an item, you just don't know necessarily the details of it. So
and you can, if necessary, notify the owners of those items through the service, which maintains their anonymity. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but you can solve the most common problems regardless of permissions. And hopefully soon this will be coming to data flows as well as data sets and other.
Excellent. All right. Leonardo. Any ETA for data flows as a data source on Excel?
Nope. It's another one of those things that we have talked about publicly until it's on the release plan. Any date that I could give would be both made up and wildly optimistic. So keep an eye on the release plan and understand that the Power BI and Excel teams understand that this is a valuable scenario.
Yes. And then Wukash, thank you for becoming a member. Not Wukash Pawlowski, a different Wukash. All right, and then Brendan, thank you for the super chat. I think you did that to bump up your question of note. Your question was next, so sorry. Brendan, I need to exclude data imports on the 1st and 15th of the month for one data source. Is it possible to do this with a date filter in the query editor without building a list of dates to filter out? Exclude data imports on that. So when we say we want to exclude data imports, are we saying we want to avoid refreshes on the 1st and 15th, or are we saying we need to exclude the actual data for the 1st and 15th of the month?
So I interpreted it in the latter way, where they want to not include data from those dates, and the thing. Yep, and he's saying exclude the data. So yes, you should be able to hard code this in your query if you choose to. So adding a filter, basically as long as you have a column where you have the day of the month, you can, you can filter on that in the query.
Yep.
But I would question, is that the business logic that you want to hard code into your query in such a way that if the business logic needs to change, that you need to go back in and edit that code and retest the code and redeploy the code, and just the ongoing maintenance and technical debt that might introduce. Having a lookup table with dates to exclude may be more flexible in the short term and is likely to be more self-documenting in the long term. So be aware that just because you can do it doesn't mean that it is maybe the best technical solution.
Yes. Yes. Excellent. All right.
We were too busy asking ourselves if we could. I can't do a Jeff Goldblum voice, so that's all I got.
All right. Mr. Paul Turley. Good to see you, Paul. We were excited to see Gen 2 composite models, but the restrictions that all measure names from all model sources must be unique was a showstopper. Has this been addressed yet? No. No. So, yeah. I don't know. So yeah, we can't comment on, is that coming down the pipe? So maybe there will be some information at MBAS talking about improvements and roadmap for the direct query over Power BI data sets. But right now, that's, I can't comment on that. It is not addressed currently. I can tell you that.
And if we get back to that happy path phrase that we used earlier as well, the current preview implementation of direct query over data sets is designed to work for the most common scenarios that most people have most of the time, like that canonical happy path when you're trying to mash up multiple data sets. And I suspect that there are multiple cases like this one that are on the team's plan, not making any commitments, but I suspect that there are multiple things like this that are on the team's plan to address as they move towards bringing this feature to general availability.
Yes. I feel a sneeze coming on, by the way.
Yeah, and I want to comment on Mark, who's been commenting about tests and test environments. Everybody has a test environment. It's just some organizations are fortunate enough to have a dedicated production environment as well.
Yes, yes, I love that. All right, how are we doing on time? We got 2 minutes. All right, let's do this. Donald. So also Mark, thank you for your super chat, and hi. Vaughn, thank you for becoming a member. Very much appreciated. All right, Donald, do you see Power Query in Azure Data Factory getting parity with the Power BI service version in the future? Maybe.
I can't see the future.
Wait. Do you have a magic 8-ball? We could.
I see dead people.
Yeah, don't know. Donald, keep your eyes on the release plans to see if that maybe gets updated and whatnot. So no info that we can share. Michael, is there a way to load data from RTF? Is that like RTFM file? The ERP system is very old and trying to find ways to have structured data.
So the thing that I would look at there, so I don't know specifically for RTF. I'm old, but not that old. Is to look at custom connectors for Power Query. So even if there is not a built-in connector from Microsoft that reads a given file format or connects to a given data source type, there may be a custom connector out there. The other thing that is worth looking at is whether or not your ERP can also dump to CSV, which Power Query and Power BI do read. It's really just a matter of figuring out the right thing for your system.
Or even if there's not a custom connector, is there an ODBC driver out there somewhere that you could use just as a generic, like, hey, let's just go get it from there? So that may be something that's available and take a look at. And that would avoid having to use a custom connector also.
Or an intermediary step of exporting to files, which adds complexity and maintenance.
Yes. Excellent. All right, so we are at time. Brendan, though, did have one other question that I do want to call out because it's important from a member perspective. How do we pre-submit questions? And so, Brendan, on Tuesday, be on the lookout for the community tab on the YouTube channel. And I will have a post there for the members for visitor tier and higher on how to do exactly that. There are some older posts there which also have it, but I'll get one up on the top on Tuesday because Tuesday is when I will schedule the next live stream as well. And so I'll have a post there on how you can pre-submit your questions. So take a look at that, the community tab on the YouTube channel. That is how you find out, because I don't have a direct way to like message members, and so it's hard to like do things like that. So I just have to put it on the community tab. All right, Matthew, thank you so much for spending time with me and, hanging out, answering questions. I thought the questions were good.
The pleasure is all mine.
Yeah. Any parting words, anything you want to make people aware of or to highlight that you may be doing?
You can't drop this on me at the last minute. That's
what
that's
what
the
do you
sort
want
of
to
advertise? I don't have anything to advertise, and I don't have any sponsors for this video, but I just want to say thank you both to Adam and to everybody that's on the call. I've mentioned this to Adam one-on-one before, but the last year plus has just been absolutely awful for me, as I assume it has been for everyone. And these morning streams are a touch point and a sanity safety net for me. The engagement with the community is super, super valuable, and I appreciate all of you and everything that you're doing. And if it weren't for you being there and being part of the conversation, 2021 would be even more awful than it is.
I agree. I've been thoroughly enjoyed doing the Saturday morning live streams, and it's been fun. And that community touch point, I can't wait to do in-person events again. And just, yes.
You're going to make me cry on camera.
I know. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We will be back next Saturday. Enjoy your week and have a great time. We'll see you.
Take care, everybody.